The Kevin Bacon theory is that everybody in the world is only 7 degrees of separation away from Kevin Bacon.
Mark had made his own from plumbing supplies.
And again, I had the misfortune of riding one of them, and it was absolutely hideous.
I should try and draw this
With
Yes.
without Googling it.
Hi, Single Track podcast listeners. This is Mark, and this is the latest episode of the Single Track Magazine podcast. I'm joined today in our virtual studio by 3 other members of the team. First of all, we've got Amanda.
Hello.
There we go. Say hello. That's good. And we've got Chips.
Is this thing on? Hello?
Yeah, Chips is beaming in from the Pyrenees, no less. And we also have our Scottish correspondent, long-time contributor, Sani. Say hello, Sani.
Hello, Sani.
Coming up later in this episode, we've got an interview with Richard Breeden from Trash Free Trails. That was done by Hannah. Well, first of all, we're going to start off with a few talking points of the week. And I think the first one I want to bring up is the press release that came in yesterday. I mean, for the listeners' benefit, it is, what day is it today? It's Tuesday. Monday this week, we got the press release from British Cycling announcing their new sponsor for the next 8 years, which is Shell, the oil company. I think we can say that the general gut reaction from the public has been WTF, and that was certainly my reaction. We've got a cycling governing body taking sponsorship from a petrochemical giant, claiming that this is, in their press release, that this is going to help them reach their net zero carbon target. You've heard the theory of 7 degrees of separation from, is it Kevin Bacon? Stay with me on this. I know I'm going off. Sounds like it's going off on a tangent. The Kevin Bacon theory is that everybody in the world is only 7 degrees of separation away from Kevin Bacon. And by that I mean that you know somebody, that's 1 degree of separation, who knows somebody 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 who knows Kevin Bacon. And therefore, we're only 7 degrees of separation away from Kevin Bacon. Or in other words, 7 degrees of separation away from anybody in the world. So in that regard, you can say we're only 7 degrees, everybody's 7 degrees separation away from Vladimir Putin. And yet, just because there's actually a trail of connection between you and him doesn't mean to say that you're a fascist invader of the eastern side of Europe. It's an association. That 7 degrees of association is far enough away that no one's going to actually call you a hypocrite for doing that. And that's the thing that's come out of this whole thing. There's been an argument about hypocrisy here, that people complaining that Shell are sponsoring British Cycling. You're hypocrites because you put petrol in your car. And I don't take with the idea that hypocrisy is black and white. I think there's degrees of hypocrisy, and that scale of 7 degrees of separation illustrates it for me. We try and disassociate ourselves with as many degrees of separation from the bad things in life and the bad companies as much as we can, but ultimately we're all connected, and therefore we're all in one way or another hypocrites. But what British Cycling have done, there's no degree of separation between themselves and Shell. They've gone straight in for that first degree of separation. Shell are clearly wanting to associate themselves with the good, clean, green side of cycling, and so they've decided to shower British Cycling with money. But I don't think British Cycling have thought about that association the other way and how it makes them look. And I think it makes them look like dicks, to be honest.
They haven't actually explained anything. That's where they've gone wrong. They haven't British Cycling haven't given an outline of how it's going to help them or help cycling, apart from financially.
There's been many arguments put forward on the forum about this, and to be fair, British Cycling, they do need a sponsor. They do need the cash. If we want to succeed on the sporting front around the world, then British Cycling needs that cash to be able to support cycling athletes. So they definitely need the cash. And I do imagine that they weren't sat there looking at many options. I don't think they had a suite of, we've got all these offers of sponsorship from all these big companies, and let's choose this one, Shell. If we're going to give British Cycling some credit, I suspect it was the only offer on the table, or it was certainly the one that was offering the most money. And so maybe good intentions behind it. They just saw what they could do with that cash, but I just think the optics are absolutely awful. Sani, what do you think?
Sorry, I just raised my hand, which is probably not very good when you're on a podcast. What I'm fascinated by is, why are Shell actually doing this? What are they getting out of this? Because when I think about British Cycling, I think road cycling, and you look at the the current teams that are sponsored in the Pro Peloton. So you've got Team UAE, you've got Ineos, you've got Bahrain. Pro cycling is not exactly the paragon of virtue when it comes to clean sport. It's always been involved in sponsorship that may be regarded as questionable. So I wonder whether this is just a natural extension with British Cycling just throwing the hat in the ring with Shell, and like you say, Mark, taking the money because it may well be the only offer on the table, and just going, you know what, this is where we're going to get our money, and we're just going to hold our nose. They perhaps may not even be holding their nose at this. They're probably thinking this is a really good deal, but what are Shell getting out of it? Okay. For those of you listening, at this point, Chips has run off. There seems to be a chicken, a dog, and a doorbell. Nice.
Carry on, Sonny. What were you saying?
No, that was fundamental. That was my profundity of point, and now I feel that has just been completely wasted. So you know what? They can do what they like.
I want to just point out, literally an hour before we sat down to record this podcast, another press release has come through. It's not from British Cycling. It is from British Triathlon, and they're announcing a new official partnership. And the official partnership, who's sponsoring British Triathlon? It's a company called NIU UK.
Are they an arms dealer?
They're not an arms dealer. Do you know what they are? They are a manufacturer of electrified two-wheel support vehicles, which they are providing to all the event staff of British Triathlon. Let me read this little bit from the press release. The partnership between NIU and British Triathlon is founded on their shared trajectory to reduce the environmental impact and increase long-term sustainability of UK sporting events. It goes on, but I just think the irony of those two press releases coming within 24 hours of each other is golden.
I want to know what this is. I'd like to see this.
They make mopeds. They make electric mopeds. It's electric two-wheel transport. They make electric scooters and everything up to like it's kind of, like your mod style covered in mirrors moped thing.
Vespa,
that's it. Yeah, it looks like a Vespa except it's electric. So
that's really cool.
I think it's cool. It's a sustainable, and this is the thing, isn't it? We've got, on the one hand, we've got British Cycling taking 30 pieces of silver from a petrochemical company renowned for destroying the environment. And on the other side, a press release has just come through from British Triathlon saying that they now have a major sponsor, and this major sponsor develops sustainable transport. I'm just pointing out the irony of these two press releases. And how one of them, British Triathlon, are going to get lots of pats on the back for a sustainable sponsor, and that's certainly not what is happening to British Cycling. What do you think, Chips? First of all, who was at the door?
Well, it was a delivery of a bike for me. So you'll have to tune in next time to find what exactly it was. So just to play devil's advocate a touch, obviously Shell you introduce them as the oil company. I'm sure they would say that they're a technology company that happens to do a bit of, drilling on the side, and mostly they're looking towards future transportation in all its forms. But yes, they are an oil company. They do have form though for sponsoring cycling. I think the Peugeot team back in possibly the Tom Simpson days was co-sponsored by Shell and later Esso, I think. So it's not completely out of the blue that Shell has sponsored a cycling team. Obviously, I guess there's a difference between having a little shoulder patch on a Team Peugeot Cycles Robert Miller era cycling jersey and sort of helping steer the direction of British cycling for the next 8 years. And it's a massive undertaking as well. 8 years that takes us to the end of sales of petrol cars in the UK, doesn't it? 2030?
Yeah, probably does.
So that's conveniently timed. So
yeah.
By the time Shell's sponsorship runs out, you won't be able to buy petrol cars in the UK.
Indeed. Right. Well, we've got a lot to talk about, but I think we've expressed our opinions there. Hopefully mine is clear. I just think British Cycling, read the fucking room.
Yes,
It's about the last thing that I will say. And on the last thing I'm going to say is anybody out there arguing, oh, you put petrol in your car, so therefore you're a hypocrite. We're all hypocrites. But that doesn't mean that we can't point at an oil company and go, stop drilling oil out of the ground and try and do something better. And we'll leave it there. Right, anyway, we're going to move on before I burst a blood vessel. I'm going to bring Sani in. Funnily enough, last week's episode we had Ben and his talking point. I was a little worried about it because I said, Ben, what are you going to talk about today in the podcast? And he said, I've got a stem. And I just thought, what on earth can you talk about? Sani, you too have a stem to talk about, but yours is a little different. Do you want to give us some details? What have you got?
Absolutely. So, readers of a certain vintage will recall the ProFlex Flex stem, or as originally was made by Allroad. So back in the dim and distant, must have been about 1988 when I was but a lad, a spotty-faced teenager at school. Next big thing was suspension. Now before RockShox came out with the RS1, Allroad came out with the Flex stem, which later got branded as ProFlex. Now this gave you a few millimetres of vertical travel, and it was meant to take the edge off bumps. Now anyone who has ever ridden the original Flex stem will know it was absolutely hideous. There was nothing to recommend it whatsoever. Cannondale, with their first attempt at a full suspension bike, I think it was the EST, it was amazing. It was black and green. It looked awesome. It had a coil shock, but it had a Flex stem at the front with their pepperoni forks, with their stiffer than a stiffer thing. So I got the chance to try one of these back in the day, and it was absolutely hideous. And it pretty much cured me of ever wanting to do it again. In fact, even with that, I did actually dabble in ProFlex products again and used their what they call the J-Link Path Vector 2 fork, which I paid 20 quid for second hand, and it's probably the worst £20 I've ever spent. Now, Amanda, you seem to be wondering at this point, what on earth am I talking about?
I am a bit. I also, when you say hideous, do you just mean the way it looks? Or...
Oh no, it wasn't just an aesthetic thing, it was the way it performed. So every time you hit a bump, you kind of got shot forward, and let's face it, bikes back then weren't really designed for going downhill or uphill or on flat ground at all fast. And it used to twist really badly as well. So when you found yourself going into a corner, you could actually feel one hand pushing down more than you'd kind of like. You're thinking, when is this going to snap? Now, I never snapped one, but I never trusted one enough either to keep going with it. So, jump forward to today. Where are we? Well, Flex stems are back.
No way. Surely history's not repeating itself.
Well, in a way. So, obviously, we now have the great and the good sucking at the teat of gravel. We've obviously just had the UCI Gravel World Championships, which just an excuse for roadies to go off-road on their normal road bikes. And Redshift Sports have kicked things off again with their suspension stem. Now, you'll be glad to know that the technology has come on quite a lot, but we're still relying on elastomers. So we've not gone down the road which Allsop did with their dual pivot suspension stem, which had a coil in it, which was truly horrendous as well, and weighed more than pretty much most forks of the time. So Redshift have come up with this stem, and I have had the pleasure of using it, and much to my surprise, it's very much not shit. I was expecting it to be dreadful, absolutely awful, but it's 20 mil of travel, which on a gravel bike is actually really, really effective. I'm astonished. I cannot believe these words are even coming out of my mouth, but it's really good. Discuss.
So, does it have any of the same traits as the original Flex stem? Like, you just outlined them. You're just saying you go around corners and it sort of twists and things. Does it not do any of that?
Strangely, not at all, because its stems back then were thinner than a thin thing. They were all made from chromoly, and it was the classic quill design, so they were very narrow. This thing is I'm just looking at it right now, it's at least twice as wide, and they put the pivot, they've got a dual pivot, so there's a proper bolt that goes through at the stem point, which is lateral to the steerer, so that gives it a degree of stiffness, which the old ProFlex never had. So amazingly, it works. And I just can't get around. how it works.
How much would one of these cost these days?
That's irrelevant, because obviously,
How much would it cost?
Technology, you can't put a price on technology.
It'll cost less than a gravel suspension fork.
It costs significantly less. Well said, Amanda. It's I have the Pro version, so that's the 15% lighter with the titanium bolts, blah 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 blah, and it comes in at £269.
Say that again. Sorry, I don't think we caught that.
£269.99. However, baking powder? No, there is actually a cheaper version as well. That's the Pro version, which obviously, being a pro or not being a pro, I had to have because it just sounds cool. But there's a normal version as well, which comes in at about £180, which is
what a bargain!
Quite a bit substantially cheaper. Now, I feel you're not embracing this, Mark. There's a degree of cynicism that I can feel in your voice. Yes. Just bear with me though. So let's face it, gravel bikes. Anyone who rides a gravel bike knows that as soon as you start hitting a bit of rock, bit of chunk, bit of gnar, it's horrible. They really have their limitations. I think, as Ross would say, it's the wrong bike 100% of the time. Whereas I quite enjoy riding my gravel bike. I've always enjoyed riding cross bikes previously, in inappropriate situations on mountain bike trails. What the stem does is just take the bite out, take the edge out when you're hitting into little pebbles and bigger hits as well, and you get just enough cushion that by the end of the ride you don't feel like you've been battered. So I think it's a 2 thumbs up from me so far. I'm still testing it. We'll see how it goes longer term, but I'm genuinely impressed.
When are we going to see your testing results?
I'll go and finish testing it within the next month, and then I'll write up a review for the website.
Excellent. There we go. Chips, what do you reckon to the return of the flex stem?
I think for this application, it's probably the right technology for the job. I've ridden a number of gravel suspension products. There's things like the Specialized Diverge bike, which also has an inch of travel where the stem moves vertically about an inch. And again, can you lock this one out, Sunny, or are you always suspended?
With this one, you are always suspended. It does come with a range of elastomers, so you can have the fun changing them. The Cane Creek version.
Stick in it.
Don't be cynical.
Oh, okay.
The Cane Creek version does actually have, it's not called a lockout, but it's a stiffening lever on top, which looks like it's handily placed to remove certain parts of your body if you come off at a bad angle. But this particular one, no, you fit and forget.
Yeah,
wow.
I would say that for the amount of suspension you're asking it to do on the terrain that you're riding, it's probably a decent thing, because you're looking for comfort rather than performance grip, really. Because if you're riding on proper gravel, you should have no grip anyway. That's the joy of gravel riding. If you wanted grip, you'd ride a mountain bike. You're riding a gravel bike because you want to be quirky and different, and maybe you've got the right kind of terrain for it. But certainly, I've found on gravel suspension forks like the Cannondale gravel lefty and the RockShox Rudy fork, they're all sort of 30 mil of travel, and it's enough to know that it's working, but you're not really. I don't think there's any room for needing compression damping adjustment, because it's either on or it's off, and you've either got to the end of the travel or you're on your way to it.
So I want to know what's next. The 30-year-old tech is now coming back. Is this the start of a trend? What else can we think of from back then that might be coming back? Mag wheels? Will we see those again?
The Allsop Soft Ride I-Beam. Oh my God, Chips. It was horrendous. I don't know if you ever had the displeasure of riding one, but it was truly, truly awful. It utterly pointless. You even got a custom frame that could go with it as well. It bolted onto your top tube, and it was just this cover. I don't know how they made it. Was it carbon? I can't quite remember, but
Right. Amanda doesn't have any clue what we're talking about here.
So if you imagine a trials hardtail, so a really, really sloping frame with no saddle, and then your frame. This is going to work well on a podcast. So frame.
Oh, you need pictures. You need diagrams for this, don't you?
Angles diagonally down towards the rear dropout, from the head tube, and then angling up towards where the saddle sits is another diagonal. Only this is made from it's a sandwich of 2 carbon fiber twigs with.
I should try and draw this
With rust.
without Googling it.
I don't wish to alarm anyone, but I think I've just had a stroke. Is this actually happening?
So yes,
dear.
it was 2 sort of I don't know, baseball bats of carbon with a rubbery mid layer, like a blancmange mid layer, so that as it flexed, the 2 layers sheared against one another. The best bit about it was if you sat down on the saddle, you were completely suspended. You were like super comfy because your saddle had probably about a foot of vertical travel. It did mean that when you went downhill and you stood up, the saddle came up to meet you. So you were always sat in the saddle.
Is that clear, Amanda? Have you got a full,
I'm looking
accurate
forward
picture in your...
to Amanda's reimagined
yeah.
picture.
Yeah, I need a moment to process that one.
You need to draw a picture of what you think that is.
Yeah.
And then we'll put that into the story on the website. This is what Amanda thinks Chips was talking about.
To get back to your question, Mark, about what could be coming back, again, find us in the old Madison Freewheel catalogue back in the late 80s, the Odyssey steering dampenator. Basically, this was a dampening rod that was attached to your forks to basically take the big hits out when you're clattering through things on your rigid bike. And I had the misfortune of riding one of them, and it was absolutely hideous. There's no point to it whatsoever. So I'm pretty sure it will fit in with just because it's gravel doesn't mean it's not shit brigade. I think it could make a real comeback. I think it could be absolutely awesome.
Right, well, moving on, from ancient kit that's coming back.
It's all
Amanda.
coming back for gravel bikes, isn't it? You
is.
bought a jack of no trades bike and you're trying to make it work on stuff.
And the only way you can make it work is by importing tech from the 80s.
You can't say that, Amanda.
I can say it because I've got a gravel bike and I know that it's pointless. It's just a road bike that can cope with the canal in Hebden. But really, I should be on a hardtail at that point.
Yeah, you absolutely can say it, but you're not meant to say it.
Sorry, gravel's really cool.
Excellent.
Big fan.
The
Huge
Pentaveret will be after you.
Amanda, what have you got for us this week?
A public apology, I think, to not for what I've just said. So I'm the person that turns up on a night ride with an Exposure Max D on my bars and a Diablo on my head, and I can see fine, and I think I just render everybody else's lights useless unless they've also got however many lumens I've got. It's that thing where your light is only as good as everyone else on the group ride at night. And I got a taste of my own medicine when I went to the Todd Harrier's trail run last week, because I went with just a head torch that I take camping that I can run with fine on my own, and everyone's got, like, they're all serious, and they've got the equivalent of a Max D but on their head, and I couldn't see a thing. And it just made me realise that I just, I've got the best lights I can get for a bike so I can see, and I do a lot of group night rides. Like, all through winter, I will only really be riding at night. And if people complain that they can't see because of my lights, I just think, oh, get some decent lights then. I don't say it, although they're probably going to hear this now. So, sorry, Ride Drink Pie.
That ship has sailed.
Yeah, just basically, I don't really have anything in particular to say. It was just quite a shock turning up to, the whole thing was a shock.
Well,
I turned up to
running at night is definitely a shock.
with a group of people that enjoy it. No, I turned up to, they meet outside a pub, which is about the only thing that was the same as going for a group bike ride. And everyone looks at your shoes to work you out. Because I wondered why everyone was staring at the ground. But it was to see how spiky your trainers were. And then...
Prejudging.
Yeah. It's like, they're all looking me up and down and just assuming I'm a trail runner. But actually, no, they've just looked down at my shoes.
Maybe it's a foot fetish club you've got into by mistake, pretending to be a running club.
I had a bit of a taste of that, funnily enough, yesterday. I've started doing the Couch to 5K, and yesterday was day one, and Vic decided that she was going to accompany me. She's a reasonably good runner, and I am not. And I've got cyclist muscles that only go one way. When you start running, everything starts to try and rewind and go the other way, and everything hurts. So she said, right, we're going running. I said, right, well, I've watched the way. I'm just going to put some jogging bottoms on. And I've got some really good trainers. And I went into the depths of our cupboard and pulled out these really good A6 trainers, which cost me about 130 quid in 2002. And she literally... all I got for the entire half an hour, where I've got Joe Wiley in one ear telling me how to run, and I've got Vic on the other going, I can't believe you're still running in those. Your 80s have called and want their shoes back. So there's something judgmental about runners, I think.
Well, like cyclists don't do that.
No, we don't do that. No.
On your B twin with your Ron Hills.
We're so accommodating to all comers and whatever they ride.
Not judgmental at all.
Not judgmental at all.
I would like to defend the Todd Harriers in that they were the most welcoming bunch. But I just thought, oh, this could be my cheap winter thing. But once you've got some, it's like upgrading your tyres to winter spec. You need to get some decent running shoes for winter. And you need a light, and then it's just as expensive.
So what's the moral of this story anyway? We've got to give the listeners sort of a moral.
Put your lanyard on your Exposure Diablo and run with it in your hand, and then... Is that the moral of it though? No. No, I like running. My hips don't. I'm not built for running. It's quite good for going the places that you're not legally allowed to on a bike. Thinking, oh, this would be good on a bike.
To that because he's Scottish.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking, why don't you do what British Triathlon have done and get yourself one of those scooters? Because that'll solve all your problems. Then you don't need to do anything as silly as running, but you'll actually get to the places you want to go, or just go to the pub and stay there.
Sandy, I think you've completely missed my point earlier. I think so. We're going to move swiftly on now to Chips. Chips, how's things going over there in the Pyrenees? What's the weather doing there right now?
Well, no one likes to show off. It's sort of, you might need a light jacket in the evenings. And it did rain last Monday. I think last Monday it did rain. So there was that. So
how's your French coming along anyway?
It's still pretty rusty schoolboy French. I think when I first turned up, it was caveman French. It was man make fire. And now it's this man make hot fire now. So it's moving on. I'll get to work with tenses and adjectives another time. So my thing, I was just going to look at the joys of technology, like Amanda with her lights, and I can remember my first night ride still was with a 6-watt halogen bulbed BLT single headlight thing, and it was fine because everyone had the same dim yellow light, and you just rode to the speed accordingly. And as the light wars have gone on, and bikes and lights have got better, and batteries have got better, people have just kept up with the technology. And at some point, I think lights have got to the point where they're actually good enough. Any brighter won't make you any quicker. And it used to be if your lights were twice as bright, you could actually go a lot faster because you could see more. But now it's just like riding in daylight. So you need to look at the single track calendar when it's a full moon on, especially if it's snowed, and go out with just your head torch and learn to feel the trail more. Yeah, I've used the force.
Me and you, Chips. Me and you first met doing a lights feature, didn't we? For
we did, yes.
Mountain Bike World, was it?
Yeah, I had the brightest lights on the planet at that point. I had a cat eye stadium, which was the first HID light, and the first time I used it, people were getting off the trail about 400 meters ahead of me, like going, "Come on by." I'm like, "I'm not there yet," and Mark had. But they were 400 quid, which was a ridiculous amount of money to spend on lights. And Mark had made his own from plumbing supplies and radio control car batteries, I believe.
Yeah, that's true.
Which were fine. So I have a grumbling dog in the background.
I thought that was your stomach.
Well, you know. Yeah, I was just going to marvel at, we have this technology that lets us all kind of communicate, talk, have actual conversations to and fro across 3 different countries. We're including Scotland, and probably Lancashire as well. Is that a different country? As the independent.
Is that like Yorkshire but not as good?
I've got these buttons here that can cut you all out if I choose to.
But I think we have such such choice of technology that it's very easy to send someone a message and they didn't see that because they were checking their emails, or you were sent them a message on Slack but not on iChat or whatever it is. And I've noticed that even in the Hebden Bridge Night Ride Brigade, there's about 5 different splinter groups from, because there'll be an original night ride, and then there'll be people who think it's not rad enough, so they'll go and do their own other night ride, and then there'll be people who go, well, no, I think that's too rad, we need a less rad ride as well. But they'll all have different ways of communicating. So the Tuesday night ride will arrange things on a WhatsApp group, and then the Wednesday night ride will have a Facebook group. And then the Monday night ride might have a different WhatsApp group that has some of the same people, but not all of them. And so everyone on both groups assumes that everyone in both groups has seen all the messages. And then there'll be the really organised people that have a spreadsheet of the next 6 weeks of rides and the ride leaders and the contact names and the grid reference of where you're all meeting.
Nobody in Hebden Bridge has a spreadsheet.
And some
Did he have electricity there yet?
Oh, says the man whose phone still has buttons.
I will defend my phone to the hilt. It has buttons and it has a battery that will measure in half-life, not hours for usage. So get it round you.
And that's the other thing. The cycling has become an eternal search for USB power sockets. You can hop on a bike and it's got like 6 different things to charge up. Oh, well, I can't come out riding for a bit because I've got to charge my gears up. And then my Garmin's running low on battery. And actually, I've got a wireless dropper that has a different charger, so I need that. And then, hang on, my heart rate monitor and my headphones. And has anyone got an adapter for a USB-C to a USB-A or whatever? So
this being a problem, I mean, there are solutions. There's I think most e-bikes, Canyon e-bikes come with USB ports on now, which is very, very useful. But that aside, Chips, what's your point, caller? What's your solution to this?
Oh, well, it could be let's return to simpler times when we all rode steel hardtails and didn't have any gadgets on our bikes at all, with flex stems that don't need charging. I think doing that kind of riding now and again is very liberating once you get past oh no, I've left my phone at home. How will anyone know I've been on a ride? Will it count if it's not on Strava? So, but then equally, I have a rigid steel hardtail from the 90s that I keep, and I ride once a year, usually at the Malverns, and it reminds me just how far we've come. So, I think it's nice to look back on technology and then actually realise that bikes these days are all great and nothing goes wrong with them, and you don't stop for punctures every 10 minutes.
That started off as a whinge about technology.
And now it's
and it ended in favour of it.
Well, I think non-charging technology is great because there are, along with this sort of, well, let's electrify gears and let's electrify suspension and everything because we can, not particularly because it does anything loads better than cables. I think the technology that has grown up around it, things like tubeless tires, and components that aren't made of cheese, and bearings that work, and clothes that work. I think all those are fantastic bits of technology that is worth the price of admission.
I think there's still plenty of cheese components around if you think hard enough. I don't think everything's improved dramatically. There's certain group sets I can think of that seem to feel to me to be made of cheese. And but yes, we take your point, Chips. A point well made. Just because,
was it?
I don't know. Just because it's old, just
really
because it's old doesn't
to
mean
me.
it's not shit. I think is the conclusion, isn't it?
That's all right. So it's Tuesday, which is my night ride, and I'm going on my steel hardtail, and I've checked the WhatsApp group and the Instagram group to make sure that we're all meeting in the same place. So it is.
Sunny doesn't have any of these problems because what we're talking about is these like exist on special phones.
He finds the back of an envelope taped to the third postbox down the lane.
Yeah. Postcards. That's how you communicate with your riding buddies, isn't it?
That's harsh, but probably quite close to the truth, if I'm being brutally honest. Yeah, but the whole concept of Instagram, Facebook, social media, and then Strava and all that has just completely passed me by. And it's bizarre because I used to be in charge of IT. How the hell did that happen? But it's just one of these things that it's just I have zero interest in it. It doesn't add to the experience for me anyway.
I'm the same. Zero interest, but how do you arrange to see people if they all depend on it?
How did we do this in the past? I've got no idea.
I'm so old-fashioned that I still phone people and talk to them. I know that's quite an alien concept, but it seems to work quite well. Actually, arrange a time and a place we're going to ride, and then meet up and ride. It's quite old-fashioned, and there's still the danger that folk won't turn up, but that's part of life. You don't need to worry about what's going to happen in Strava or anything. I'm such a fart. I really am. I'm such a fart.
No, I'm going to hand over to Hannah now, who's been interviewing Richard Breeden from Trash Free Trails, talking about the Trashmob Academy. So over to you, Hannah.
So I'm joined now by Rich Breeden from Trash Free Trails, and Trash Free Trails has just launched the Trashmob Academy, which is an outdoor educational course to tackle environmental disconnection in young people. So, Rich, hello. Thank you for joining us. And off in the deep end, what is the Trashmob Academy then? What are you trying to do with that?
So it's I'll go with the top line. It's a youth engagement project that seeks confidence and overall well-being in young people that we think might need it the most. So through a program of nature connection, or what we think is nature connection, environmental and social responsibility, with a catalyst of outdoor physical activity, we're looking to develop those three constructs. The reason for leading with the kind of well-being side of things is because, to me, far from being a prerequisite for well-being, it's actually part of well-being and an indicator of. So broadly, those who are more connected to nature display higher levels of well-being.
So I think then we are saying that nature connection is good for the planet because it means that we care about the environment that's around us. But you're also saying that it's good for us because we're more likely to have happy feelings of well-being if we're out there in nature. Is that right? So it's a circular thing.
Absolutely, yeah, and yeah, I don't even know whether circular is the right. I see where you're going, but it's more like interdependence. Like one relies on the other. An inverted commas happier population should result in inverted commas happier nature. To use those words. But in short, yeah, it's good for us and nature. So it's what the word we use for the kids is it's good for both of us if we continue to act this way.
Okay. So what sort of things do you do with Trashmob to facilitate this?
It was kind of the brainchild of a couple of people to start off with. Right back before I started working with Trash Free Trails, while I was doing my masters, I went through my own journey of kind of rediscovery of this and found nature, found the outdoors, and I wanted to help people, using the methods that I had come across and discovered myself. And Dom from Trash Free Trails, who was it was just him at the time and a few volunteers, wanted to figure out how we could incorporate that kind of work into the more traditional work that Trash Free Trails was doing at the time. And we knew that there was a link between environmental protection and well-being, but we didn't really know like what that was or how to implement it. And then all of a sudden, we were trying to like maybe to borrow a term, chase a dragon that didn't exist. And what eventually Joe Shui came to us and said, look, I want to run a program of work with a group of kids from my pupil referral unit. And we thought, well, hold on a minute, this is it. This is the opportunity to work with people that might need it the most. So we developed a program of work for school teachers to deliver. So it was 6 sessions of nature connection, environmental awareness, litter education, and that kind of thing, coupled with 6 mountain bike coaching sessions. And the idea with that is, like I say, that mountain biking is very much the catalyst for the changes in environmental awareness and nature connection that we were looking to solve, really. So we ran that as a pilot, and then the pilot was successful, and then we decided to take a bit of a step back from the delivery of it and let teachers, guides, coaches deliver it themselves. So between 2020 and now, there's been 10 to 12 pilots that have run, and they've all been successful. Some of them have required a little bit more input from us than others, but really the outcomes have been great. So supported by Sprayway, Hope, and Kotick, and just more recently Go Ape. We've let those 6 sessions run their course. We've had a bit of feedback and stuff around it might be too much for some people. Believe it or not, I don't know about everybody on this podcast, but it's not the case that everybody likes mountain biking.
Mm-hmm.
I found that quite hard to believe at the time as well. But moreover, people might not have access to bikes or access to trails or whatever.
Yeah.
So we've kept that 6-session content, but we've now relaunched it such that it's a little bit more developed, a little bit more detail involved. But there's also content for runners and walkers. So we always say we are riders, runners, and roamers, and everyone's welcome. So the Trashmob Academy, as it was, didn't really fit with that because there wasn't anything for runners and roamers to do specifically. So we've launched that. Alongside that, we've also launched a brand new e-learning course in collaboration with a company called udemon.com. So that's kind of a bit of the stuff I was talking about, and a bit of the kind of background to Trash Free Trails and what we're all about in a kind of easy to digest format, so that even if you're not a rider, runner, or roamer and you sit behind a computer all day, you can still, see some of those nature connection benefits and stuff that we were talking about.
Okay, so even if you are in a school that doesn't have the funding to get some kids out into a green space and that kind of thing, there is an e-learning opportunity there. But for those that can get out into some sort of green space, you don't have to have a mountain bike. You're saying you could also just walk or run.
Walk, run, ride, run, or roam, or whatever other means of transport you see fit, I guess.
So now there is a rather wonderful video that sort of shows the journey of some of the kids that have been on the Trashmob Academy, and certainly I think anyone that's ever worked with kids that haven't had all the chances in life that maybe our own kids might have or whatever, it's really noticeable that there are kids that are excluded from mainstream education, and they've never had a day where they've been good at something or they've been praised for something, and taking them out of that environment and giving them something else and letting them discover that they can do something like ride a bike or do a wheelie or whatever it is that they find can be really transformative for them, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the kind of young people that we've worked with to date, yeah, you're right. They haven't had this feeling of being that they think that it's just them, in their little world, and that's why they act out. They don't get the attention, the right kind of attention, so they invite the wrong kind of attention, inverted commas.
Yeah.
There's so many things, like many constructs in this project and in this work that we're doing that contribute. So you're part of a group, which is always like, these people have never been part of a group with similar goals. There's a concept called self-transcendence, which is this feeling that you're part of something bigger than yourself. And this is something that we at Trash Free Trails do as much as we can, is try and make it more than the sum of its parts. So this feeling that not only are you part of a group, but that group is part of a bigger group, and that group is part of a bigger and bigger group. And if you're able to do that and instill that in people, that fosters that ownership, it fosters the community that I was talking about, and it really helps people like work on themselves, really. So these are the kind of people that, it could be all on them, for them, inverted commas, right? It could be on them to improve their own lives, but it kind of can't be. But at the same time, you have to empower them to be able to do it themselves. And how do you do that? And that's what I'm talking about being part of a group, developing ownership, developing this sense of passion and ownership, not just over your trails and the wild place they take us to, but actually over your own emotions as well. Which again, these guys don't have. So yeah, watch the film.
Yeah.
I say all of this in the film as well, but we're launching it properly. I think it's this weekend, so keep
the
an eye out
9th.
for that.
The 9th of October, I think. Yeah, it goes out live. Yeah, I saw it at Kendal Mountain Film Festival last year, and it it's really good. And so we've been talking here about Trashmob Academy being developed in the context of a pupil referral unit, but there's got to be benefit to nature connection for everyone. So can any school or any educational setting do the Trashmob Academy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always thought that when I was at school, like, why do the bad kids get to do the good stuff? But yes, we developed it with pupil referral units in mind, but that's only because they have the flexibility in their curriculum to allow this kind of stuff to happen. It's been piloted with regular schools and with similar levels of success. So it's all, there's lesson plans, it's curriculum linked, risk assessments. Provided you do the risk assessments and stuff, then you're covered by our public liability insurance. So yeah, the great thing about it is that it's super easy for any teacher, any guide to just pick up and run with it. You don't need to develop anything because we've done all that for you, and it's all free of charge as well. So
cool. And so for us oldies that are past our school days, unfortunately, I believe you have something called Purposeful Adventure, which might kind of help us reconnect as well. Would that serve the same sort of purpose?
Yes. Purposeful Adventure we ran a summer of Purposeful Adventures, but it's also a program that's integral to our work. So our mission is to remove 75% of single-use pollution from trails and wild places by 2025, and also to reconnect people with nature through Purposeful Adventure. And like I say, we ran the project in the summer, and we tried to center the idea around leaving a positive trace. And the idea of leaving a positive trace in the places that you pass through, the people that you come across on that journey, and yourself, we've been able to show that that actually deepens your connection with the places that you find yourself in.
So that's different to leave no trace, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's kind of the leave no trace has been the traditional kind of mantra. So yeah.
It's a mantra, and it's an amazing movement, and they've been like the seven steps or whatever it is to leave no trace have been well received, and it makes sense. People get it, but I think the very fact that Trash Free Trails exists, the fact that we're talking right now, means that it's not enough. Like the idea of not leaving any trace isn't working, or it is working to an extent, but the fact that we're here means that we need a little bit more. That idea of leaving a positive trace adds to that, so people know where you've been in a good way. So I think, I don't know this for sure, but Leave No Trace is founded on the principle that people were leaving a bad trace. So if you left no trace, that's better than being bad, but we move that forward to adding something to your adventure. And it can be, it does, like a couple of people went on an adventure, and the purpose was to go to do a school tour or a school visit or something, and do a lecture to some kids, or do an assembly, or do a trail clean or something like that. But it can be as simple as, you know, those signs that you see on like parks and stuff, and you just like, you always think, who's reading them? Just spend the 30 seconds to read about the place that you're in, and that'll deepen your connection with the place. If you see a bit of rubbish, pick it up. That counts as leaving a positive trace, because before you were there was a bit of rubbish. Now there isn't. And then the one for yourself, that can be whatever. The beauty of that is it can be whatever you interpret it to be. But for me and yourself, it's just about taking that time sometimes when you're trying to get your best time, or you're trying to get to the top because it's bad weather or something. It's not going to hurt to just take a few minutes just to stop and think about what you're doing, because and why you're there, because all too often we head out on our bikes, we head out on our rides and runs and roams or whatever, and we're just doing it for the sake of it because it's fun. But why is it fun? And why do you keep going to that same place? And just that process of thinking about it a little bit deepens your connection to those places.
And another element then that I think has contributed to the success of the Trashmob, particularly in Wakefield, has been the presence of Leeds urban bike parks. I think a lot of the mountain biking that they did was there.
Yeah.
So you've obviously said that it's not essential for people to be able to get on a mountain bike to go and do Trashmob Academy, but how important do you think those urban spaces, outdoor spaces, are to nature connection?
Right. Yeah, I mean, depends what you define by urban green space, because I don't know what the government definition is, but I bet it's not the same as our definition.
Well, let's say being able to access it.
Without
getting in a car.
Well, super important, right? Like, yes, it is really important, but at the same time, something we tried to do with Purposeful Adventure that I'm not sure whether it came out so well was trying to think about like adventures from your doorstep, and try your every day, because like we're very privileged in that, like, I've got a lovely dog walk just out the back of my new house. I can hop in my van, I can drive 15 minutes to Ballow Woods if I want to ride my bike. I can go an hour or so into the mountains because I'm privileged enough to have enough money to have and run a van. I'm privileged enough to have and own a house, but lots of people don't have any of that at all. So, but I think that we would do well as the outdoor community to pull back from that importance a little bit and try and advocate for adventure in its broadest adventure. People think of a multi-day, and actually it can just be to the dog walk or to the local shop. So one of the groups that piloted the Trashmob Academy, a school out of Liverpool, has a lot of orphaned refugee kids, and they get excited about going to the shop. So they get excited about going to Asda. When they were away for half term, that was what they came back and said they were the most excited about. So how on earth do you try and work with someone like that local park the school doesn't have the money to take them anywhere. So what do? The teacher, a lovely lady called Louise, organised for a load of scooters for them, and that was the physical activity that they needed. And it doesn't matter where you look, you will be able to find some sort of nature, whether that's the people or whether it's just weeds or pigeons or whatever. So yes, our urban green spaces are of paramount importance to nature connection, but I think we would do well to try and advocate for other ways of doing it, other ways of adventure, and other ways of being, really, because it is end all.
Okay, right. Well, I think that possibly raises a few interesting questions for those who are racing against the clock, and like, I wonder how connected they are to nature. The Strava watchers.
This is it, right? Don't let that. We understand that for a lot of people, that's what being outside is about. It's about getting your best time. It's about training for the next event. Don't let what I'm talking about get in the way of that. Rather, just separate the two. So every ride doesn't have to be a training ride, and if it does, then fair play. We've got some work to do to engage you in our work, but I wouldn't want to take that away from anybody. And I'm not a racer, but I understand the drive and the passion to be that dedicated to something that you love. And Ollie Young from Bristol, who just did the GB Duro, raised money for us as a result. He raised like 850 quid or something. So thanks to Ollie and everybody who donated. But he also did trail cleans and stuff along the way. So for him, yes, he was doing the GB Duro, so it was an endurance thing, and he was trying to get a good time and stuff. But he was also incorporating other bits and bobs into it as well. So that's just really cool to see.
So it sounds to me like, for those of us that are in the position of having a bit of awareness around what is around us, then we can potentially improve our lives and the planet by just being a bit more conscious about our interactions and maybe getting involved with Trash Free Trails. But if we want to go a step further, definitely do that. Okay. If we want to go a step further and in some way support the Trashmob or Trashmob Academy, or find out a bit more about it, just briefly give us the key web addresses that we should be heading to for more info.
We're at Trash Free Trails, and Instagram is the best kind of source for content and useful information. And there's always someone on the end of the messages, like I say, if you do have any questions. Trashfreetrails.org is the website, and then if you click on the Trashmob Academy, all of those links are on the Instagram link. But if you forget all of that, if the easiest way to get involved is to get out on your local trail, I guarantee you'll find some sort of single-use pollution there of some sort, and pick it up. Whether you want to tell us about it or not, great. If you want to contribute a little bit more, we've got the State of Our Trails report, which is the first and only study of its kind.
Cool. Well, I will put a bunch of other Trash Free Trails stories that we've run on Single Track across the years in the podcast story too, because I know there's a bunch of different links there, and there's also Dom talking at length about Trash Free Trails and some of the brands that you've worked with or challenged. So lots more information for anyone that wants to go back in time and learn a bit more.
That'd be great, yeah.
Thank you very much, Rich, for joining us today, and all the best for the Trashmob Academy.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, no, great to be invited, and thanks for chatting.
Welcome back to us here in the studio. That's it for this week. That's the sum total of your learnings from the Single Track team. I don't know whether there was anything in particular that you'll take away from this week's episode.
Take this knowledge and use it wisely.
Yes.
I'm going to go and research about all those things Sanny spoke about from before I was born.
You got to draw a picture of what you think Chips was talking about, the soft ride. You've got to draw a picture of that. So anyway, just quickly go around the table. Chips, what are you up to this weekend?
Oh my God. This weekend I've got a couple of friends coming to visit from Canada. Strangely, lots of people want to come and visit me these days. I don't know why. So they're turning up. And then my mum is turning up on Monday as well, so I'm going to have to hurriedly tidy the house. So very glamorous.
Fantastic. Sandy, what are you up to this weekend?
Well, contrary to what my reputation might seem, I'm actually installing a smart heating system and new radiators as well. So, yeah,
Do you have to phone
don't
it
know.
up?
Pretty much.
Is there an
It's
operator?
dial up. Yes, indeed. Hello, can we change this for you? No, I will be using my wife's smartphone to actually operate it because I do not possess such a thing. And other than that, I'm going to ride my gravel bike in the sense of supreme satisfaction. I've got 20 mil of travel, and I'm quite happy with that.
Very good. Amanda, what are you up to?
Sorry, I love that Sanny's wife is going to be in charge of when the heating comes on. What am I up to? I'm going on a bike packing trip with the Rate Good Bike Club. Rate Good.
Okay.
That's it.
I'm sorry,
That's
is that
it?
is
No
that
more
northern talk? I don't understand that. What's
Yeah.
okay?
Rate Good. Rate Good.
Excellent.
Be rate.
It's lovely and regional. I do love your accent.
Fantastic. And on that note, what am I doing this weekend? I'll finish off on that. I'm going to probably ride another e-bike. That's all for this week. So you will catch up with us next week when we've got more amazing things to talk about. Bye.
Bye.